Today we are discussing The Chosen, Season 1, Episode 6, directed by Dallas Jenkins. This is Nathan.
This is Jason.
John.
Nick.
All right. So we're 6 episodes in. We've been going through every episode, just sharing our thoughts, kind of having a roundtable discussion. We all come from different backgrounds, so we have different religious beliefs, which makes it kind of a cool collaborative discussion. So the first thing we do usually is share what kind of beer we're drinking, because this is from Brewery Ministries. So it's only appropriate that we would have this discussion with a glass of beer. What do you guys got tonight?
Well, actually, I have so you see the can, coffee porter, I believe. It's from Four Hands Brewing in great city of St. Louis, Missouri. And the coffee they use is from a local coffee shop there, which is pretty popular. It's called Sump Coffee, which is kind of cool. So I've actually been to the coffee shop and the brewery both. So what the heck? So I seen this set. I just bought one can. I buy a lot of like one can samples.
Oh, cool. Today. So that's Four Hands, not to be confused with Left Hand, right?
Yeah, Four Hands. Left Hand, I think, is what? Colorado or someplace?
I think so. What about you, John?
I went with Run Guys. I've got a Sunspun Shandy. It's a little warm out. It sounded good.
Cool.
Going with the homebrew milk stout.
Oh, wow.
It's not mine. It smells amazing. I mean, the smell is amazing. The initial taste is amazing. The finishing taste is a little bitter. But hey, it's free, so I'm going to drink the hell out of it, right?
Awesome.
Don't turn down free beer unless it's Milwaukee's Best or something.
I was just going to say that. I bought the cheapest stout I could find at this Beer Brothers store across the street, and it is called Certified Evil. It's an Imperial Oatmeal Stout. Yeah, how appropriate for this podcast. It's by Lucky Bucket Brewing from Nebraska. Never heard of them. Probably the first Nebraska beer I've ever had.
Wow.
It's not bad when it warms up, but it is kind of bitter, so it's not my favorite. Usually, like Imperial Stouts are like my jam, but I would say this is an acceptable Imperial Stout. So that's what I got.
Go ahead. I was going to say I have a beer. It's called Demon of Something Stout. I grabbed that. I said, no, I'm not doing that for this podcast. I'll do that later.
Well, I picked this one because it was cheap, but I thought, man, I'll see if anybody gets a laugh out of this. But maybe I should get one of my favorite, I think it's a porter. One of my favorite beers that I've tried is called Son of a Baptist.
Nice.
Maybe I'll bring that next episode. Okay, so let's dive into this episode. I've pulled the plot summary from IMDb, which is like super short again. It is, after witnessing the healing of a leper on the road to Capernaum, the friend of a paralytic takes desperate measures to get him through the crowd to meet Jesus. So obviously there's a whole lot missing there. The opening scene, we see maybe an ancient pawn shop. Seems kind of like an ancient version of payday loans. Kind of got the sense that this guy was maybe ripping people off a little bit. And we see a leper go in there. And when he tries to hand this guy his tools, it is revealed that he has leprosy. And of course, the pawn shop owner kind of freaks out. So what did you guys think about this scene? This kind of introduces the concept of being unclean and how people felt about leprosy and stuff. What are your thoughts?
First off, this episode opened differently. And in the past episodes, you've got some historical scene that they've shown us, like some older scene. I think I want to say typically they've been from the Old Testament or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, flashback.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't think of the word. But this time they just went right into it. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Unless he's immortal and he just has leprosy.
Is that one of the symptoms?
I don't know. You live forever, but you're constantly rotting.
This early Christian thing, the whole idea of some of these diseases like leprosy, which it mentions in the Bible, and any of those types of diseases, somehow you're unholy. The on-stop guys obviously rip people off. That's pretty much what they do today. So, it's not really different, but he totally just rigged out. He's like, why don't you just die and go to hell? It's just like they're taking it really to the extreme, and he's out. And so, I don't know. I just find that early view of people when it talks about any kind of health problem or anything that's not right about you, that has to be because you're a sinner or something.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of had almost a superstition about it. Like there were theological implications. Maybe they wondered if somebody had sinned and that's why they had leprosy. The concept of unclean was a thing that the Israelites dealt with. But like if you did something bad, you had to go wash yourself and cleanse yourself. And that was supposed to be symbolic of washing that away. Well, it wasn't just like sin that applied to. It was also if you're sick and things like that. So that is interesting. I wouldn't think today we would think that like you did something bad and that's why you got the flu, right?
Mm.
And some people thought things like that back in that time. Actually, I think some people still think stuff like that today, but it's interesting. What do you think, John?
They do. Yeah, if you have some unlucky occurrence or something, I hear like some of these diehard Christians say that, well, he lost his job or this happened. Well, he must have did something to make God unhappy with him. So, we still do it to an extent. It's not that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. And I also think that at that point in time, too, regardless of the, religious implications that were in place there, they didn't know a lot about the disease. Not to get too far ahead, but in terms of don't get too close to him. It's airborne. You don't want to breathe his air. Don't come in contact with him. It was a very scary thing to see somebody go through or to be exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed pretty accurate, I guess.
Well, not to jump ahead, but are we confident he was a leper?
I think so.
I'm gonna drop this little nugget for a later on discussion. Are we confident in what he had?
Yeah.
That's an interesting.
I think it really doesn't matter. I think this whole scene here is just, it doesn't matter what he had. I think the whole scene is just kind of setting up that this guy had something and Jesus is going to heal him later on. I think that's the whole purpose of the scene, is just to
exactly
set it up.
Well, it is important to note, I think, that in their minds, like if they touched this guy, they became spiritually unclean. Like it wasn't just that they might get the disease that he had, but in their religion, they would become spiritually unclean just by touching the guy. So that's kind of an important part to put in the back of your mind for the next time we see him in a few scenes. Does anybody know how leprosy was transmitted? Like, I don't know. They say don't breathe his air, but I don't know if it was air or touch or what.
Isn't it a virus?
I don't know.
It's a skin disease. It might be. I think it's a skin disease of some type or something.
Yeah, it is a skin disease, but it's airborne?
The Googles says airborne.
Did the name of it change, or does it just not exist anymore, really, on a widespread level?
You still have leprosy now. It's just that they can treat it. It's just.
Oh.
It's also called Hansen's disease.
Like the band?
Bop.
Leprosy is no longer something to fear. Today, the disease is rare and treatable. most people not named John Purdy heal and are just fine.
If you notice you kind of established the pawn shop guy is probably ripping people off and he's greedy. It freaks him out so much that he doesn't even want to take the money back. So you're looking at this guy that's just ripping people off. He's cheap. He's like, just take the money, take it. That tells you right there how freaked out he is.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what the guy with the leprosy is doing too, because I did some Googling, just kind of reading about it. I should have written down where I got this, but one site I was reading said somebody who had leprosy had to ring a bell and shout unclean if anybody came near them. So it's interesting that guy's, instead of doing that and announcing unclean, he's just trying to keep a low profile. So he's sort of skating around what he's supposed to do, but I guess how are you supposed to survive if you don't? I don't know.
He's just desperate. I mean, he says he's given up his tools, which are like his last thing it seems like he has. It's also unfortunate that the pawn shop guy implies that the tools were stolen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the start of this episode, we don't know. These may be stolen. We don't know. And they come to find out, this guy was like, these are the last tools. It's like, oh, that kind of sucks.
It's probably not something they wanted to pawn. They'd probably be worth more.
Yeah.
Well, not just tools. It wasn't just tools. It was like high-end tools. I mean, because the guy thought this dude was a mason or something. Got this high-end set of tools because he's going through all these different woods coming from all these places and all that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important too to denote that, like Jason said, they're not just tools. That's how he made income. That was his means to income, and by giving those up, I mean, he's basically at his wit's end where he can't go down that path anymore. That trade, that skill that he's acquired over several years, he doesn't have that option, and is so desperate that I have to sell these.
I didn't catch that. So he basically can't make money anymore if he pawns these. You got to be pretty desperate.
Yeah, not through his trade or his craft.
Maybe he had some great value brand tools.
Maybe from the tools, he was probably a mason or something to some extent. And so his leprosy probably pushed him out of that time frame is a good upper middle class job.
Yeah, trading those in, you put the stopwatch on your life kind of at that point.
Yeah.
It's all you got.
Well, what are you going to do after that? I mean, is this guy just planning on dying?
Resorting to more sinful things, right?
Well, he said he was going to the Dead Sea. So I was kind of interested in that because Dead Sea apparently at that time frame had some kind of healing factors to it. So I'm not sure if he was going to the Dead Sea because he thought Jesus was there, or he's going to the Dead Sea because he thought he could bathe in the sea and get healed. I wasn't kind of clear on that.
That's why I took it, because I think people thought because it has such high salt content, I mean, it can kill a lot of bacteria and stuff. So I took it like he was going there to bathe in it to see if maybe it would heal him.
The shopkeeper almost seemed to have a religious reaction to that, though, where his response was, nice to meet you, pilgrim. He called him a pilgrim. I don't remember exactly what he said. He was on this religious journey to get there.
That's interesting.
You think the shopkeeper was religious, or you think the shopkeeper just being what he's doing, he just is familiar with those types of people coming through?
Smart mouth.
Yeah, he definitely just seemed familiar with the people that come through there.
Mm-hmm. I took it like he was sort of like the Pharisees, but different. I mean, I thought maybe he's a Jew, but he's a schemer at the same time. So I don't know. He's definitely skating the rules of whatever his faith is. So speaking of which, you want to go on to the next scene where we see Nicodemus reporting about his interview with John the Baptist to the other Pharisees. So this was a really interesting scene to me. I liked it because like the Pharisees are often just painted as a bad group, like they're all evil. Well, I liked to see some disagreement within them because you see here, like, they're not all bad. They're trying, some of them are trying to do the right thing, and there's actually debate within them. And I think that's kind of a more accurate portrayal of groups today. I mean, they're not all bad or all good. They're a mix. And some groups are more corrupt than others. But it seemed like at this point, like they sided against having John the Baptist prosecuted. What did you take from this debate here?
Definitely thought it was interesting. And I'm liking Nicodemus more and more. I really didn't like him at the start of the show. But as the series goes on, I like the fact that he's like, pump the brakes here. Like, let's talk about this. Let's think through this. And even with his student that ended up being the cause of John the Baptist being imprisoned, instead of, blatantly chastising him in front of all these other Pharisee leaders, he's just like, I'll talk to him. We'll handle this. Like he deals with business in a way that I have a lot of respect for that.
I took it that Nicodemus sees that there's something in John the Baptist, because he's obviously questioning his faith and he's seeking. I think when he had that meeting with them, I think he tricked them. I mean, he went in there, he's trying to protect John the Baptist. He's like, you guys, by arresting him, you guys more or less gave this guy validity. And he goes, so you took this person who's nobody and you had him arrested. One, you got the Romans involved in our affairs. And two, now you just gave this guy validity when he's nothing. You should just go ahead and release him. And I think just who Nicodemus is, the teachers of teachers, they were listening to him. And so I think he didn't really believe what he was saying. He's just saying what they want to say, get John the Baptist out. I think in essence, he tricked him.
Yeah, he wasn't totally honest, I guess, because he said some things that you can tell in this episode. Nicodemus has come around to what John the Baptist says, but he doesn't tell the other religious leaders that, which is interesting.
He's still trying to maybe figure it out. I don't know.
Well, that and it would be scary because if the other religious leaders didn't accept him, then he would be a heretic. So potentially his life's in danger. Isn't that kind of scary? Like you don't believe something your church teaches and they kill you. Like, I'm glad we don't do that anymore.
I mean, that again, not to get ahead, but I really liked, how John said, like, Nicodemus was like, I'll handle it. Like, I really liked the scene where he does handle it. I really like that discussion. I won't jump ahead there, but I just thought all of that was a good way of showing that, maybe, I don't know if the show did this on purpose, but like you said, that not all of these Pharisees were bad. It was unique. I think, from my little bit of experience, I think it was unique to see that.
So he said something interesting.
Nicodemus talks to a student though in a later scene. He doesn't chastise him for doing wrong, which is more or less what he kind of presented to him there when he had that council. Instead of chastising, he's more trying to convince him to come around his way, where he's kind of doing it subtle. Like there might be some different interpretations, and that's not reading the scripture, so we don't know. And so he's on that line. He's trying to play both sides. He's trying not to get himself killed, but he's also trying to, he sees it to his mind kind of changed a little bit. So
I like the stance he took of, and the way I kind of interpreted or thought about this was, is it Judaism only follows the Old Testament? The New Testament doesn't exist so kind of similar to what he was saying, like, if you look at the Jews, they only follow Judaism, but if you only believe and see and think that what's going to happen is written in the book, then things may pass you by. You may not be open to new occurrences, new whatever. Not necessarily that they're wrong, but you could just miss something. So like you said, this one, there were those 4 or 5 books that, that certain sect of individuals followed. And, if they only follow that, they could miss other things. And so Nicodemus is saying, hey, you know what? Sure, we have what's written. It's historical and it's fact, but let's keep our minds open,
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, he's kind of towing the line to say, maybe there's something. Maybe there's something you should be interested in.
Did you catch that he says something like, John's baptism is not our baptism, or in the Old Testament they had cleansing, like we mentioned earlier. If you sinned or something, you were supposed to go wash yourself, and that was symbolic of being cleansed. Well, he draws a distinction between what John's doing and their tradition of cleansing. He says, "Oh, that's not what we do." And I thought that was interesting because there's a big debate about baptism. It'll come into play next episode, I think. But just to point out, like, they're drawing that there's a difference between John's baptism and the Old Testament concept of cleansing, which I think at this point, I mean, the leper, I don't know if that's part of why he's going to the Dead Sea or what. But maybe to go to, if I skip ahead just a little, technically, when Jesus touches this guy and heals him, Jesus would have to go cleanse, and he doesn't. So that's very interesting. What about this? Let's see. Is there anything major in this Quintus Matthew scene here?
I thought it was awesome.
I loved it.
The interactions between Quintus and Matthew, I think, are probably one of the most humorous things about the entire series. But yeah, I thought it was completely hilarious. And again, it really goes back to reiterate what, Jason pointed out on episode 1, Matthew's got something going on with him, whether it's autism or OCD or something, or it could be a combination of things. There's something there. And I think Quintus even makes a comment about it in the scene, about his oddities but yeah, I absolutely love that scene.
Yeah.
That was Nick that pointed out oddness and stuff. That was at OCD or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Actually, I kind of like that scene there. I think when you look at Quintus, he likes Matthew. He just likes Matthew just because he's so odd. So it just kind of like entertains him and stuff. So he favors him to some extent, and he just kind of likes listening to him. I noticed though, he's got that senator's son coming with the entourage, and so you kind of see Quintus is like, he talks about his life. He goes, one father gave him everything, one made their father worked, and now I'm like higher up than he is. And so, Quintus is trying to show how big he is. And so he kind of, as a test run, asked Matthew what he would do. And so Matthew's like, well, I wouldn't tell him what I conquered. I'd show him what I'm building. And he looks like, why didn't I think of that? And so you go, okay. I mean, he does. I think he kind of respects a little bit Matthew's thinking, but he also realized Matthew's kind of odd too. So I think he likes that.
Mm-hmm.
I love the part I'm sorry.
I think he really likes Matthew. He's so different.
I like he goes to start getting ready, or Quintus does, and Matthew's just kind of standing there, and he's just going on, and it's like 5 or 10 seconds that passes, and then he stops, and he turns around, and he's like, "You guys would have just kept standing there, wouldn't you?"
I love it.
And then he kind of promotes what's that Gaius.
Mm-hmm.
But he also kind of insults him at the same time. Kind of it's kind of arrogance about him. He's like, "Ain't your people German?" Then he goes, "Oh, I just better give you promotion." So because he's all happy with him. But he also made him look good because he said this is the first time that we actually pulled in more money than what Pilate was asking. So his mind is, "I'm looking good." So the guy's a real ambitious guy. You can kind of see there.
Yeah, he's like, didn't your people surrender? And he's like, you mean join the winning side?
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, yeah. Tried to put that dagger in, and he's like, no, man, we just joined the winning side.
It's all a matter of
Potato.
perspective.
Yeah, exactly. We surrendered. Nah, man, we joined the side that won.
I was watching this scene with a friend, and he was like, I don't understand why some of these scenes are in here. He thought they could have been cut out. So I started thinking, I think they probably serve a purpose for later on down the road. Like we see here, Quintus basically says, we'll have a long time to unravel the mystery of why you're not a stain on a cartwheel. So to me, it seems like, oh, he's got long-term plans for Matthew at this point. And you can kind of see when Matthew's like, I would show him my plans for infrastructure. Quintus is like, unbelievable. And he just like freezes for a minute. So even though he thinks Matthew is kind of odd, he also thinks he's a genius. So I think he's planning on keeping him around for a while.
It's almost like he wants to exploit him. I got that vibe in a lot of ways, that's really what Quintus is good at, is exploiting people for his benefit. He made another comment about Simon and Andrew paying their taxes and how he works well under pressure. And he could, what did he say? He could, manufacture a situation to put them under additional pressure down the road. So that seems to be kind of like his talent base. He's constantly looking for people that can be used.
Yeah, we never see him.
I think more and more we go, we kind of humanize Quintus a little bit. I mean, this scene, we got to learn a little bit more about him. I do think I agree with John, he's using people. I think the guy is incredibly ambitious. He wants to move up in the ranks, and he's going to do whatever he can to do that. And so, but you're starting to see, I mean, he talks about his father, that I think that's going to serve a purpose later on. I mean, you are humanizing him a little bit. We're getting to know this character little by little by little. I mean, sitting here talking about it, we know that he's an ambitious guy and not just going the line for the Romans. He wants to move up. So, like you said, I think later scenes, or at least, later on, that's going to kind of serve a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says something like he had to work for everything that he had, but his friend had everything handed to him. Yep. So, yeah, that's probably supposed to tell us something about him. But I also wondered, okay, so I know ultimately Matthew's probably going to drop what he's doing. He's going to go follow Jesus around. So what's that going to do to this relationship between him and Quintus? And is Quintus going to be like, where'd he go? Is he going to be ticked? Is he going to go after him? Is it going to contribute to the Romans' heat on Jesus? I don't know. So I'm curious to see where that's going to go.
Isn't that whole thing with Matthew also kind of interesting? I mean, he's a logical guy, and so he sees these miracles and stuff happening with fish and all that, but he just can't, like, in his mind, explain it. He asked, Simon and Andrew if he was tricked or not. Like, why would you ain't going to listen to our answer because you don't believe yourself, because he knows he wasn't tricked. And so, I mean, this guy is someone who takes every angle, and so it's kind of, and it's just interesting. I think that dynamic is his way of thinking.
It baffles me that he's telling his reporting of what he saw, and Gaius, I believe, is like, yeah, you were tricked, or there was some subversion that, yeah. But like Gaius, but at this point in time, has to know that Matthew, for as odd as he is a very smart individual, and if he is sitting there telling you that he is confident he did not see any trickery or any shenanigans or tomfoolery, you should probably take that seriously. Like, something's there. And for him to just be like, oh no, you're whatever, you're wrong, you didn't see anything, they tricked you. Okay, I don't know. It didn't fit for me as far as like kind of the plot line. I would have expected him to take that a little more seriously. But
it is interesting.
Yeah.
Don't you think the Romans are going to, when Matthew leaves, I mean, they're going to feel a little bit betrayed a little bit, because if you look at this meeting with Gaius, the one who's actually protecting him every day, there's a relationship there. When they talk to each other, by the time you get to Dominus, a relationship there. So I think the time of Matthew leaves, they're going to feel a little bit betrayed or something.
I wonder if we're seeing so much of Gaius because he's going to be like one of the soldiers that crucifies Jesus later or something. Because you've got to try to figure out if we've met the soldier that stabs Jesus or not yet with a spear. I don't know.
Wait, it's known
He
who that
just got
is.
that promotion.
Yeah. Or they're going to have that confrontation in the garden right before the crucifixion. Well, there's going to be some sword fighting, so I don't know.
Wait,
That's
they think
interesting. Yeah, because Dominus just gave him a promotion. Didn't you see there? So
Yeah.
Looking ahead, I bet you. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Yeah.
What are you going to say, Nick?
they know or they believe they know who stabbed Jesus?
No, I don't think there's a name given. It just says centurion or soldier or something like that.
Soldier number 1 in the credits.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if they're building a story around that soldier, like fan fiction almost,
I think for me, if that's what they're doing, while that's a cool, interesting little arc there, for someone like me who's trying to, learn and grow from this on a spiritual path, that's a little too much liberty. I don't know. From an entertainment standpoint, I get it. From an educational storytelling standpoint, though, that's a good bit of liberty you're taking there.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to confuse facts with fiction, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they thought, oh, there must be more backstory there. But I don't know, man. Maybe Gaius is just a made-up character who's always going to be a protagonist. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
That's some good planning on the writers. If that's what it turns out to be, people writing the series actually, they're playing this thing out long term.
Well,
playing the long game.
Well, while we're thinking about that, I wanted out of a series like this, I'd like to see some people who see the evidence and they see some of the miracles or they know Jesus, but they don't believe, because I think that's more realistic. I wouldn't want to see the show like everyone who comes in contact with Jesus converts, because that's not what happens in real life necessarily. So, and it's an interesting conversation. Why is that? Why did Quintus dismiss Matthew's testimony? Why does Matthew not trust himself at this point? Like, you start bringing in the concept of different people need different levels of information to believe something. And so you've got that concept, which is why it's fun to follow Matthew. But finally, in this episode, we get to see some people who see Jesus do a miracle and yet reject him. And I think, well, one, that's what was written in the Bible, so it's accurate of that, but it's kind of real life, right? A lot of people see the same thing happen, and they're not going to come to the same conclusion. I think it's an interesting debate.
We're always seeing miracles like that. You see people curing leprosy or making people walk. Those don't think so-called miracles today, or don't believe those miracles. Okay,
So I said, are we sure he had leprosy?
I don't know. That is an interesting thought. I'd never really thought about that before.
From a practical standpoint, not to get too deep off path here, it is entirely possible that there are practical things that Jesus was a part of that, while to the outside or non-focused eye looked like miracles, but whatever, curing the paralyzed, what do they call him, a paralytic? The paralyzed man, let's just use present day nomenclature here. You're healing that guy. Maybe he had some sort of virus that knocked out his ability to walk, and it just so happened at that moment in time, Jesus gave him the willpower and mind over matter. And hey, look, I feel better. The placebo of Jesus believing in me and touching me, I can stand up. Oh my God, you healed me. Well, really, we just gave you the mind power to try and overcome your sickness. And okay, you go back to the leprosy. That one's harder. That one's much harder. Because, I mean, leprosy is a pretty obvious thing, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
And if the way the story goes, you know, all of the spots and everything disappeared, okay. I mean, are you sure it wasn't mud and you just took a shower and it went away? I don't think that's the case. But so that one's harder to explain. But I don't know. That's where, for a person like me who's, you know, trying to understand and learn this, that's where the concept of faith and believing comes into play. That's the part where I got to work hard to buy
It's the
in.
supernatural debate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It is hard.
Totally different approach to that. I thought you were going to say, you sure it wasn't all staged? I thought that's the route you were taking. So.
I like to think that Jesus was not the biggest con artist in the history of the world. I mean, there's a series that the church I attend plays. It's called Alpha. I hope to lose Jason.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Anyway, there's a series they play called Alpha. If you get a chance, YouTube it. It's actually pretty interesting. But regardless, one of the statements they make says that either Christianity as a whole is, you know, one of the most unbelievable, outstanding, amazing things that's ever happened, or it's the biggest hoax in the history of the world because of the number of people that have bought in and believe. And you know, just sitting back and thinking about either side of that being true was just wild. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that brings an interesting debate and an interesting topic when it comes to mankind. I think sometimes religion is acceptable because I think man wants to believe that there's part of something here. So there's, whether it's Christianity or what the Romans believe or any religion, there's hundreds of different religions. So we feel like we need to be part of something instead of, hey, we're just here by ourselves roaming around.
And the government confirmed the existence of UFOs. Just saying.
Yeah, but how do they define UFO? Russians?
Exactly. Just an unidentified flying object. Did not say alien. Anyway, we digress.
We don't get much backstory on this guy, you know? Because I've heard some friends say, well, what if this was just a guy who they brought in who wasn't really paralyzed? So this, if you ask that question about this story, it is tough to figure out because we don't know anything about this paralyzed guy. There is a similar story. I wish I could remember what chapter it is, but if you look up, there's another paralyzed guy who had been laying by a pool, like a famous place, for 38 years. Well, that guy got healed too, according to the Bible. So I thought about that one. Okay, that'd be a lot harder to stage or fake because everybody knew this guy had been paralyzed for that long. They would have known him. So if you're looking for some way to find some evidence, that story is a little more helpful if you're trying to work through like doubt about the supernatural, because there would have been witnesses. But bringing a guy that we don't know anything about, that particular story doesn't give us as much help in working through that skepticism. But I don't know, if you guys don't know my background, I really struggled with the supernatural for a long time, so I can understand where you're coming from.
Would you have the physical capabilities of walking after being paralyzed for 38 years?
Yeah, I wondered that. I'm like, these are brand new muscles.
Like
atrophy or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
His legs are like the size of my finger. Yeah.
Like even this guy in the show, I'm like, this guy can walk after being paralyzed. And so I'm just kind of curious, when you read those stories like this one, okay, so in my mind, Jesus was out in some field someplace. It wasn't in someone's house. I don't know what you guys thought when you were thinking of these stories.
Oh, okay.
Jesus loves playing in fields. We've already established that. The first episode, we see him playing in a field with kids, and now he's playing in a field with a leper. I mean, Jesus is developing an interesting track record here. I'm just saying.
Well, why don't we jump to the field scene? We've got two things to talk about here. we see Simon talking to the other disciples, and he seems to be having an identity crisis of sorts. And we also see the leper show up.
Is Jason's camera dirty?
It was fuzzy on my end. Is it still fuzzy?
Nah, it looks okay. It just looks...
Okay.
I think it's the light that's washing out. I don't think it's fuzzy.
Yeah, I went and turned the light on. Maybe I should turn it back off.
Yeah. Man, I want to hear Purdy's take on the curing and the healing and the paralyzed and the leper and the supernatural. Though, disclaimer, I do want to throw this out there. I lived with this man for I don't know how long, and he brought a Ouija board into my house. Here's the thing. I don't know where I stand on ghosts or anything along those lines, but I draw the line with like antagonizing.
Busted.
I don't care if they exist or not, but if they do, don't play with it. Don't bring a Ouija board inside of a person's home. Anyway, Purdy, the floor is yours.
I believe in heaven and hell. I believe in God and Satan. And I don't believe that miracles currently happen today. And I don't believe in ghosts and all of that. So that's as simple as I can put it for you, Nick.
So I'm going to bring a Ouija board and I'm going to test or tempt fate because, that's worth it.
So if you don't believe in miracles today, do you believe in them like at this time of the story?
Yeah, because I believe that God's capable of all things. And I think Jesus was the Son of God. So through him, I think all things were possible.
Okay, stop reading the company line down there.
Transparency.
Someone's just reading the first couple pages of the intro to the Bible. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm actually a little bit different than you guys, I guess. I actually don't believe in miracles. And so I'm not 100% convinced of the ones in the Bible are miracles. I kind of follow, I guess, Thomas Jefferson. He doesn't believe in miracles either. I think modern day stuff, sometimes people will say it's a miracle. This person got healed. They had a car crash. They were in the hospital. Yeah, but modern medicine helped out a lot too. And I think sometimes things are just by chance. Things happen. I'm not convinced.
I completely agree with you on
Miracle thing.
Modern day at least. Yeah. I do think that if, there's documentation of them being performed, I think it's possible Jesus could have done those things. And again, if we're talking about a God that could create everything from nothing, then why couldn't he? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at on it, but I don't think they happen today.
Man,
I'm kind of a mix. So I certainly believe Jesus actually performed miracles. Today, it's like I still believe in them, but I think they're rare because I think, God, if he can make a universe from nothing, he's fully capable. The difficulty is I don't see very many. I have had a couple stories I've heard that I think might be a miracle. I also believe some things that happen are coincidence. I'm not somebody who thinks that everything that happens is orchestrated. I put a pretty high value on free will. So I think God both intervenes at times, but also lets humans play things out a lot. Now, the hardest part for me, which maybe later in the show, if we're podcasting on when this stuff happens, the early church, Jesus passed on his ability to do miracles to those followers. The difficulty for me, I don't see anyone performing miracles today. And the ones that have, like I had a paralyzed vocal cord for a while, and I still have some struggles with it. Well, I had multiple people tell me that they healed my vocal cord and it was not healed. So I just don't know what to make of it. Like the more people have told me that they've healed me and I wasn't, then and no one's ever actually healed it. So I don't think God can't do miracles or doesn't. I don't think he's just, in my opinion, they could still happen, but I just think they're rare. And I don't know what to think about whether or not he heals through people anymore. That is a mystery to me.
What's those religious people charismatic? I guess they are. I used to work with a lady. She was a charismatic Christian, and she was convinced of miracles. And she used the example: her sister couldn't get pregnant. They were trying for a couple of years. Then they had to together and they prayed, and then next thing, boom, she's pregnant. It's a miracle. I was like, oh, that's not a miracle. I mean, it just happens. I mean, there's no guarantee that you're going to just get pregnant wherever you want to get pregnant. I mean,
realistically, it's not something that's testable. Like you couldn't. It's hard to verify if it's a miracle or if it's a coincidence. So I understand what you're saying.
I think, I mean, it's not in this episode, but I mean, Mary was a virgin who got pregnant, right? That's wild, right? Imagine someone walking up to you, I'm a virgin and I got pregnant. Man, the line of jokes I'm going to crack are going to be insane.
Did you know hundreds of women claim that every year?
Yeah.
The average age of them is like 19.
I can't. Yeah, I was about to say, I got to stop.
It's true. I did a study on the virgin birth, and that's what I discovered. Well, I did find the scene with the leper pretty moving, personally. And that whole concept of if Jesus touches this guy, he becomes unclean in Jewish belief. He just does it anyways. And everybody's freaked out. I mean, if he really did have an airborne illness, how did Jesus not get it? And he just goes right up there and heals this guy. So for multiple reasons, like the miracle is interesting, but what does it mean that he didn't get it? And what does it mean that, this is the guy who's supposed to be the epitome of the Jewish law? And he basically breaks the law by touching this guy, because you're not supposed to touch a leper. So I always wondered how that fits into, it says Jesus came to fulfill the law, but there's certain points where I think he broke it, but maybe that's not exactly breaking it. Maybe it's I guess they say the spirit of the law. I mean, well, you're not going to help this man because the law says not to. Maybe that's what's going on here. What do you guys think about that?
Establishing a new law is kind of how I look at it. It's not necessarily, he's there to bring about a change and changes to the old law, the old sacrifices, the old tithing, those things that had to be done in a very rigid, stringent way. His teachings are all about, hey, we're rethinking this,
Next time I get pulled over, I'm gonna try that. Hey, I'm just reestablishing the law. You say it's 35, it's definitely 50. I'm just reestablishing what should be.
Depending on where you're driving, that's the way things are going right now. So
I think I can have problems with that terminology when you say law. I have kind of issues with that because I don't think that these people are too worried about breaking the law. I think they're really think that if they touch this guy, they're going to get leprosy. I mean, they're pulling their knives out and, getting real serious about it. So I think we truly have that belief of fear that kind of supersedes, I guess, we say law in some of these traditions. I've seen this scene also when he heals a leper. I was thinking, oh, cat's out of the bag. I mean, because he was trying to be secretive about his stuff. I was like, it's out. And so it's kind of, that the Egyptians is definitely going to say something.
He tells him to keep it a secret, doesn't he?
Yeah, he says, go home, don't say anything, go to the temple, show the priest, make an offering.
Yeah, sure, I'm going to do that.
Well, actually, he doesn't in the Bible. He goes and tells everyone. We don't get to see that part, though.
Not surprising. Well, so back to the thing you said, you're calling it law, and it's something we spoke about, I don't know, maybe first or second episode, the concept of God's law versus man's law, right? Touching a leper is probably not God's law. right? Touching a leper is probably a man's law thing because it's self-preservation, trying to not spread this disease. Joke's on them, it's spread through the airborne.
Man, I've been trying to figure that out. I was trying to figure out, okay, so they had all these Old Testament laws. Were they all actually from God, or were some of them added on or man-made? And I've heard people say it was a mix, but I'm having trouble verifying for sure. But yeah, that's an interesting concept. Like, you don't really think God wants somebody to just suffer and die alone, do you?
Well, what do you guys classify as a law, first of all? I mean, you shouldn't play with lines. Not the law says that. Self-preservation tells me that. You said that's man's law?
Well, I guess the Jews had their own law, and they're existing within Roman society. So there's like law, like United States law, and then within that they had religious law, and they could potentially execute people. So I see what you're saying. That when it comes to this leopard thing, I don't think this is a law. I think there's a fear there. Like there's a fear that you're not going to walk up and try to pet a lion. That's going to happen. Mm-hmm.
But I think when it comes to this leper, I think it falls down the same line. It's not a law telling them to do it. I think in their mind, they're really scared if they touch this guy, they're going to get leprosy.
Wait, is it?
It's more preservation than it is actual abiding by law.
It's a touch mandate, like a mask mandate, only a touch mandate. It's not a law. It's a strict suggestion.
I know there was the law that if you did touch one, you had to go, wash immediately. But I should look that up.
The law should be if you touch someone.
That goes back to the COVID thing. I mean, like, the law says you're supposed to wash your hands and stuff after and stay 6 feet away so you don't get COVID. But I think the real fear there is that you're afraid to get COVID. So you're putting these laws in place so these things don't happen.
Right.
So, I mean, you wouldn't walk up and one that has COVID, just go up and give them a French kiss. I mean, there's no law that says I'm not to do that. I mean, it goes back to self-preservation again. I'm not going to.
Challenge accepted.
I'll have to look into that a little bit.
French kissing someone with COVID?
No, the whole leper cleansing thing. Did you notice? Well, first of all, you've got one of the disciples that wants to gets his knife out, basically wants to fight this guy. I thought it was interesting that Jesus sent Simon away right before this. I wondered, is it because Simon probably would have killed this guy? I don't know. But the guy who gives the leper his shirt is the same guy that pulled the knife out. I wondered if that's redemption of some sort.
Hopefully in his mind.
Yeah. Don't you think it's interesting, like some of the stuff we see in this episode? Jesus recruits these guys, they're religious, and they want to stab people, or they really struggle to want to help people, like in some of the upcoming scenes. I like it because I think it's realistic, but it's interesting, isn't it?
Especially when they're in the house. And was it Simon there at the back door? And he's like, it's getting a little crowded. And his brother, I forgot his name, looks around. He's like, they're just company. They're neighbors. They're fine. He points to the front door, and he's like, oh, ooh, yeah, good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, they want to help people, but oh, man, okay, that's too many people. Yeah.
I think Simon is having a little bit of a crisis here because I got the sense in this episode that he didn't know what he was doing. If he's not going to be doing what he normally does or protecting people, he's kind of lost. So in that scene when he's singing, I think we're supposed to take that he's not a good singer and he's just trying stuff, but it's not really, it's either new to him or it's not really him. And then he can't find a job. He goes, checks on all these people. I think he's dealing with not understanding his place. And then finally at the end, he gets to lead them down that path. But I found that interesting. But at this point in the episode, were you guys feeling he was very awkward or something was off?
I guess I didn't catch that.
I thought he was just playing his protector role. I mean, when I read the Bible, I kind of look at his time and sole purpose. I kind of think the apostles all have a role why Jesus picked them.
Mm-hmm.
I think Simon's sole purpose is protector and bodyguard of types.
Yeah, I think you're right. What about this scene at the house? We've got everybody starting to come to the house because they want to hear Jesus talk. The most interesting thing I thought at the beginning here is Jesus won't reveal his lineage. Like, he's actually a descendant of King David. I think they know that the Messiah they're waiting for is supposed to be a descendant of King David from the tribe of Judah, all this stuff. So they start trying to ask him this stuff, and he won't tell them where he's from or like what his lineage is. Did you think that was interesting?
He tells them something, right?
Yeah, he has some like, why would you guess Judah?
Oh, that's right.
Very Nicodemus answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like they're like, where are you from? He's like, oh, Nazareth or whatever. They're like, oh, wasn't that the place where they killed everyone 2 years younger and under? I wanted to be like, yeah, man, they were looking for me. Like, I wanted him to say that. Like, yeah, guilty. That's my fault. But he obviously that's not his character. But that would have been a pretty nice little play in there. They missed me.
So they got to this crowd gathering, this big crowd. The Romans start getting all freaked out. I mean, Gaius sends Matthew home. And so just 3 of them show up. Did you guys notice that only 3 Roman soldiers show up? I'm thinking to myself, if I'm in charge, I'm bringing about 20 at least. I'm going down there and, I'm thinking, come on, get a little extra money and get a couple more soldiers.
You're bring
I'm going to
pain.
overanalyze that.
That's a good point. I guess it wasn't a huge crowd, but I guess they didn't know why they were gathering yet. Hey, John, do you remember at lunch in high school, there were a bunch of people gathered in a circle in the commons, and all the teachers freaked out because people were chanting fight. And when they got to the center of the circle, it was 2 students doing a thumb war.
Yeah, I do. That was awesome.
What were they doing?
They were just having a thumb war. Like, they got a bench, and there's just 2 guys, and they got a whole circle around them, people to chant fight. And those teachers panicked, man.
Wow.
Well,
sometimes I wonder if we went to the same school.
I didn't see much except in Glidden's English class, where we got to talk about predestination.
Oh, yes. Good old Glidden.
What about the Nicodemus scene with Shmuel? What about this? This is like one of my favorite scenes that I've seen so far. Tell me what your thoughts are on this.
The non-chastising scene, right?
Yeah, where he brings him in there and he says, "Will you read to me from Isaiah?"
I liked it. And then he's like, he starts reading. He goes, no, farther down. It's like, okay, all right.
He looked pretty sheepish.
I've kind of already told my thoughts on this section, but I just thought this was interesting. I thought the way Nicodemus played this out, it was very I don't know. It truly shows that Nicodemus may be turning the corner a little more than we may have already been shown. He understands something's up here, something's going on, and sure, he's a Pharisee, but he's trying to understand and maybe open his mind, and that's what he's trying to tell Shmuel here, indirectly, so he doesn't also become a heretic.
Yeah, this was a really interesting debate too, because so I like the idea he's letting him kind of make his decision. A good teacher doesn't just tell people what to think. So you're right, we see that. I like that we've got this debate between like sticking with the old idea, and it's almost like tradition versus innovation, and Nicodemus is arguing for both, but Shmuel is really stuck on that initial interpretation. I think that whole debate's interesting. Plus, we're back to that thing, like 2 people with the same information coming to different ideas.
So I found that scene incredibly interesting, just based on kind of what you said there, Nathan. I mean, a lot of the stuff is up to interpretation. And so what Nicodemus believed was the interpretation before is what so all his students actually were taking that particular interpretation. What you see now is Nicodemus is starting to want to change. He's learning. And so, two people can read the same thing and come up with two different conclusions. I mean, that's pretty much the basis of modern day Christianity, right? I mean, they come up with all these traditions, these rules that necessarily are not that clear in the scripture to justify that. They're still doing it. So I don't know why. I just found that real interesting. I thought it was real kind of enlightening a little bit, kind of, this over academic as far as, he's, still feeling the way he does, but then Nicodemus is kind of, but they're also picking and choosing scripture too to kind of justify their different views. I mean, this whole discussion that he had with God walking or not, and then Shmuel kind of pulls up these other verses to kind of justify that. And, Nicodemus is really, well, it doesn't really justify your view either. We really don't know, to be realistic about it. And so that was his.
Oh, I loved what they said to Shmuel the first time, because they said, quoting Solomon is not justification. Like, that's not a reason. I thought that was interesting. It's like, just because the idea there is just because you're quoting scripture doesn't mean like you actually have an excuse. And like, what does that mean? I mean, I assume it's like there's context, and you can't just get away with quoting a scripture and be off the hook. Really explain yourself type of thing.
There's just a little arrogance there if you look at him. What's the guy's name? Shmuel or Smell?
Well, I can never tell.
General. There's a little arrogance there, which kind of goes back to modern day Christianity as well. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm not going to have this debate about you. This is how it is. And if you look at even real quick, turns Jesus in based on that. So I think that's it's interesting when you look at some of these same topics and some of these same things that kind of happen today as what happened back then. I mean, it's kind of, my religion's better than yours, so I got to do everything I can to stomp yours out because you're wrong. I'm right. And I think that's what the Pharisees kind of were doing. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
You look at the Christians, I think, ones that were persecuted, the persecutors, the ones being persecuted are actually turned into the ones doing the persecution now in modern times. So that switched a little bit.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with that from a psychology standpoint, because, like, I work in a church. I'm a Christian, but I have been, well, not at my current church, but previously, I have had, I've been on the receiving end of like somebody telling me that I'm right, you're wrong thing on a number of situations. I mean, view of divorce. Actually, the one that I really got a lot of heat over was how old I think the Earth is. And I'm asking, why is this person beating on me? Like, this isn't a hill to die on. But I mean, I had a volunteer quit because a kid asked me a question once about age of the Earth or something. I told him it wasn't an essential belief, and I had an adult volunteer get ticked and quit and basically never like continue going to the church, but like pretend I didn't exist and like never talk to me again. So I'm always interested in the psychology behind this kind of thing. I know everybody's not like that, but man, they sure give us a bad name when they do.
I would like to put a pin in understanding that story for later. Okay. I really would like to hear that. That's okay. Interesting.
The age of the Earth thing?
Yeah. Okay. What's that tolerance?
They think that was serious here in Kansas.
Well, John, this is your favorite character here. What do you think about this scene?
I mean, I thought the one takeaway or one of the lines that stood out to me the most was when he said that our understanding will never be complete. I thought that was kind of a pivotal moment in the whole interaction there. And the whole time, again, it wasn't. He was approaching it as a teacher, as more of almost like a parent instructing a child type of interaction. It wasn't no, you're wrong, this is how you need to think. It was like, well, no, let's think about it this way. Does this make sense to you? But I did really like that one line.
That was good.
He kind of referenced it somewhere. If you don't keep learning, you're going to be ignorant or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
I like that line too.
Did you catch? He says, "Why can't God do something new?" And then he said he referenced the Sadducees because they only believe the first 5 books of the Bible. So then you've got the Jews; they only take the Old Testament. Then you've got Christians. We take the Old and the New Testament. Now, you can get yourself into dangerous waters. I know this comes down more to the scholarly stuff, but like there are new groups that have come into existence with a new book, like after Christianity. So, I guess it comes down to vetting those books and seeing, is God really doing something new or not? So, I don't know. I just thought that's interesting. Now you look at all these different groups, but I did like that question. Why can't God do something new? So you want to fast forward to, so we've got Nicodemus. He goes to the house where these people lower a paralyzed man down into the roof, or through the roof. And I thought it was interesting that, Simon and Mary, like they were real hesitant to help them for a while. What did you think of this scene?
I'm trying to remember the words that were used, but they brought the paralyzed man up through the crowd, and I wish, maybe you don't remember, but they were saying something to the effect of like, we want to get them close, and Simon was like, well, yeah, everyone wants to be close, everyone wants to hear, right? They're like, well, no, he's paralyzed, like, I want to hear, help him. And then they're like, she's like, kind of like the old meme of the hold my beer, I got this, right? Takes him up to the roof and then lowers him down. Like, A for effort on that, right? But
my roof,
right, just ripping it off. It's like, come on, yeah, that was some determination there.
I think there's 2 things there that I thought was interesting. I think one, Matthew's kind of doing things out of characteristic to actually hear this guy. I mean, he's climbing up this creaky ladder, which doesn't sound like something he would do. I mean, he even gets so distracted, he reaches in that bowl wherever this was kids are eating, out washing them off and stuff. And also, I don't know if you guys can help me on that. When Jesus was talking to Shmuel, did he call him a blasphemer?
he said, "You say I'm a blasphemer."
Oh, okay. I thought he was.
Yeah, did you see Matthew like dusting off the steps as he walked up that ladder?
Yeah, with the little, wiping him down as he was, yep, I saw that. And at the very end, are you lost?
Dude, those kids are totally green screened on that roof.
I got to go back and watch now.
That drove me nuts. I'm like, they're not really up there. I'm like, why would they green screen a scene like this? And after a while, I was like, oh yeah, they're kids on a roof.
Yeah. Could have been done better.
There's no money to budget for insurance lawsuits.
I'm sure it was. Nick, how you doing on time?
I'm at that time.
Okay. Well, do you want to give us your final thoughts, and then the rest of us can do our final thoughts?
Sure.
That way you can be free to go if you need.
Yeah. But I thought this episode was pretty cool. I think at the end where Jesus is walking away and it's like his Jedi sense tingled, or his Spidey sense tingled, and he stops and turns around and he sees Matthew and he's like, yeah, you're gonna be one of mine. And then he turns and walks away. But I overall, we're starting to see Jesus do more public displays. People are starting to recognize him, and this is the closest to this point that we've seen Jesus come to the Romans, right? So I think from a show standpoint, it's starting to set the scene. It's starting to I think come to the climax of the season if we're not kind of already at that or coming on the backside of it. So I really like this episode. Again, I know you guys' favorite episode is Jesus in the Field with Kids, but this one's still up there for me. Probably one of the top 3. So I'm excited for what's coming next. I know at some point Matthew's going to get drafted into this rabble of individuals, so I'm excited to see where this goes.
Awesome.
So, all right, guys. I appreciate it. My apologies for dropping off. Got to go put the little one to bed.
All right, man. Take care.
Let's have a good one. Yeah.
This chapter, so I think this is Matthew. I think it's Mark chapter 2. I can't remember, but it's pretty early in the book of Mark, this healing scene. And I always like this story. It's one of my favorites because of the trick question Jesus asks, because he says, which is harder to say your sins are forgiven, because you can't prove that they're really forgiven, or to tell a paralyzed person to stand up and walk. So he does both. But the thing that is probably what upset the Pharisees here is if Jesus says your sins are forgiven, in their view, in their religion, only God can forgive sins. So he's, in their minds, saying he's God, and therefore he's a heretic, so now they're going to try to kill him. And that is a big provocative statement. What did you think about that scene?
I think when you look at that scene, Jesus was kind of preaching a little bit. It was more relaxed. And then when the paralyzed person comes down, it's still somewhat relaxed, but when the Pharisees pop up, it got real tense there. It was almost like an adversarial. Jesus' tone kind of switched. It was very adversarial when it came between the two of them. I noticed, again, with the Pharisees, which, they do this stuff. They don't like the guy because of the way he's preaching, but instead of saying you're a blasphemer, they're going to yell to the Romans, he's, disrupting the public, peace. And so, again, we got the thing with the Pharisees always, in my mind, just blatantly out lying, instead of just handling stuff on their own. That was kind of a thing. So I kind of like that because it's starting to get serious. I think it's starting to get serious now. It's become more where Jesus is now an agitator now than he was more of a passive. So just kind of, but I thought the actor did a good job. The way he just kind of switched to more relaxed, adversarial. I thought that was actually pretty. You haven't seen that yet. He hasn't been adversarial at all yet.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that at all.
I agree with Jason. I think this episode in particular, how it ended, is kind of like a tipping point where we're going from these acts being done in private to a more public setting, that it's very much on the radar. And it's like, okay, now it's go time. And the gloves kind of come off a little bit. I personally thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, I thought there was a good mix of some comedy in this, whether or not it's historically accurate or not. But it was entertaining to watch. But the way the episode ended, it kind of sets it up and puts things in motion, things in gear for, okay, we're getting real about this now. It's go time.
Yeah. I can't wait until the next episode because I'm guessing there's going to be that meeting between Nicodemus and Jesus. And I'm just waiting to see how that conversation goes. How does he deal with Jesus's theology, and how does it match up with his? I don't know. I just really want to see that conversation. Plus, I have my own questions about that story in the Bible. There is a debate about baptism that comes out of that chapter about whether or not you have to be baptized to be saved and stuff. And I think earlier in this episode, when Nicodemus says, well, what they're doing isn't the same as Old Testament cleansing, that kind of gives me a hint. I always had a hunch later that when they talk about, well, I'll just say this. I'll leave some mystery. I think that moment is going to come into play and into the show's interpretation of John chapter 3 when that debate happens. So I don't know if you care about that sort of thing, but I do. I think it's fun. So yeah, I really like how they portray Jesus here. I like him as a teacher. It was cool to see, like I said, that healing of the paralytic. The showdown between him and the religious leaders is one of my favorite moments in the Bible. So to see it on screen here and to see it done really well, I was really happy with this episode. Yeah, I guess the one thing we haven't talked about too much is the disciples' hesitancy to help people. I actually liked seeing that because I think that's something we deal with today. Like some guy comes up to you on the street, do you help them? Are they safe? Are they dangerous? I think it's something religious people struggle with is helping the poor. Maybe it's just that we don't know how to do it or something, or what the best way to go about that is. But they sort of bring that into this show. Didn't necessarily give me any concrete answers on how to do that in modern times, but I don't know. Did you notice that in the show, and did that speak to you at all?
I mean, in terms of helping the poor, there were a few lines in there where Jesus is talking about the left and right hand, and one of the things I appreciated was that there was pushback where it was like, what does that even mean? How, like, I have two hands. Like, of course they're going to know what they're doing because they both run through me. And I did like how there was a little bit more explanation to that. And in terms of, you should do it generously without thinking, to where, your left hand's not even aware that your right hand's just giving. Mm-hmm. So
I like that scene, but I kind of took it a little bit different approach. I think I kind of look at that as sometimes people they'll give to the poor, or they'll go do Meals on Wheels, but then they got put on social media because they're getting validation. Look what I'm doing. I'm so great. And so I think in my mind, you're not actually helping the poor anymore. You're just doing it just to make yourself look good, like you're a Christian. I got that scene about the left and the right hand. That's why I got out of that was Jesus is just help people just for the sake of helping them. You don't have to tell everybody that you're helping this person. Do it. That's kind of the right thing to do. Another thing is, I think, what do you guys think about this character, actor, how he plays Jesus? I like it because, again, with the showdown, like I said before, he's real serious. Then on the other side, he just kind of, like when he's talking, he kind of jokes around a little bit, and he's kind of, a little bit more of a, more of a human person. I mean, I'm not sure if Jesus really acted that way or anybody at that time frame did, but so different than what you see typical, movie with Jesus where he's always just so strict all the time. He's just almost, he just preaches. There's no human nature to him. He doesn't joke around. He doesn't do anything. And he's just but I think the character himself kind of looks like he's a little bit more of I would imagine the guy, just his personality is just a friendly guy, but like he probably jokes around. I think it's just kind of interesting. It's just different than what I've seen cast Jesus characters.
Mm-hmm. I could see that being a realistic take. I guess this kind of embodies how I thought maybe he would be based on those verses about him, like being a friend of sinners, And I thought, if people saw him that way and liked him who were not religious, there's got to be something to him in terms of compassion or he'd be enjoyable to sit down with and have a meal with or something like that. It's like there's nothing that says he was like a funny guy or anything, but I feel like some of those nicknames and phrases, they got to come from somewhere. So I could see this being a realistic portrayal. I always thought I have this internal battle at times, more so in the past than now, but sometimes like thinking God's scary. And a guy gave me this DVD to watch. It was a portrayal of Jesus from like the 70s or maybe later, but it was on the book of Matthew, but it was quite dated. And I liked the portrayal of Jesus. It was kind of similar to this, but it was such an old film and it didn't have character development behind the disciples like this does. And so it's kind of in the same keeping, but it's really nice to see like a modern version of this that's well done. So
don't you think? I always think it's interesting. You said that. God's scary. This whole idea of, I think that might be just early church. And in my mind, I think you do these things because you're afraid of God. You're going to go to hell. You do this bad stuff instead of the other way around. You see some Jesus or God loves you. So I think, in a way, I kind of catch myself thinking that is I'm more doing it because I'm scared than I am, or I think than I am just because I want to do it because this person's supposed to be looking out for my best interest. Does that kind of make sense to you on that? I mean,
oh yeah.
You're not necessarily scared of your parents per se. There's a love connection there, but I remember having football coaches. I was terrified of those guys. You kind of have a little bit different dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings up a great debate, though. The question of does if you followed God out of fear, is that enough, or does that miss the point? I guess is the better way to say it. Does that miss the point? I don't know. What do you think, John?
I'm torn on it, to be honest. Because I think the God of the Old Testament, pretty scary entity. That's
why I was scared. Yeah.
Yeah.
Read that
there's
book.
some
I'm like, oh.
terrifying stuff that happens there.
Mm-hmm.
God of the New Testament seems totally different. So I don't know. And again, to get back to the question of, it's kind of like, is it better to be feared than loved? It depends on what your goal is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting the same outcome, I don't know. This is going to be terrible for me to say. I don't know. I think ultimately everybody wants to be loved, and it would be ideal if it were love. But if we do some things out of fear, as long as it's the right thing, is that a bad thing? I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know in some places, and I don't know about all places, but some places in the Bible, the word fear, it's actually like more the term respect in the original language. But I don't know that covers every time that, shows up. I think maybe the word fear does show up in places in the original language, but if you read your English Bible, it looks like it's telling you to be afraid of God. And I don't know that that's exactly what it meant everywhere, but yeah, like I said, maybe in some places. But yeah, I was scared. Well,
let's see what the next show has.
Yeah,
I just want to get serious now. Something to kind of get into it. So
yeah,
I kind of like this one. I still kind of like the one with the kids, but I do like this one as well. And for some reason, it sounds kind of weird. You talk about the kids being, green screened up there. It's almost like at the end of Return of the Jedi, when everything's done and they kind of have, all the dead people there sitting there watching them? Almost like they have this kid just like sitting there. They kind of incorporated him in. So, no, I kind of like this one, I thought, because I think we get more into some of the interesting stuff.
I do too. I put this up there with episode 4 as probably my 2 favorites so far. I'm starting to get kind of sad because there's only 2 left in this this season, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll go on to season 2, or maybe we'll take a break, do something else, or I don't know. But
I was going to say, aren't they already out with episode 5 on season 2? I think I saw a notification about that.
Yeah. I have not seen any of it yet, so I'm a little behind, but I'll get to it.
We're added to the list of that big list you sent us on the email there last week of the 30 different things. I was like, holy crap. I said, we just brought up one topic.
I'll explain what I'm thinking in more detail. We can talk about it, but one of those was a companion podcast. It's spiritual themes and movies. And so, I don't know. We'll see if you guys are interested or what we do. But yeah, thanks for watching this one with me. So, sounds like we all like this episode quite a bit.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, and I'm looking forward to the whole Nicodemus meeting next episode, I hope. So. All right, well, thanks for watching. And yeah, if you guys want to send us any comments or questions, contact us on Facebook under Church in a Brewery, on Instagram or YouTube under Brewery Ministries, or just go to breweryministries.org and hit contact. You can send me an email. Yeah, we'll talk about your questions on the show, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Bye.